The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Earnestly podcast coming to you on, it's July 1st, 2021. It is halftime of this year. This year hasn't been, too terrible. Better than 2020, of course. This podcast, of course, you can find on all podcast catchers such as Amazon Music, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Any place that has a podcast catcher, you're likely to find this show on that platform. Anyway, today's show is going to be something different. We're going to do something different today on the podcast. Today, we're going to do the first annual Fake Mailbag, Real Answers. And the reason I'm doing this is because rather than do the normal podcasts we do with the topics I come up with and stuff I want to talk about personally, I want to take a time to look at some of the topics out there in the land of pop culture, of sports, of anything. And just kind of take some of these questions, turn the questions into topics that I can talk about, as opposed to just like trying to dive in my head. So I went through the score of the internet of different things that's trending, different things. It's a site called Quora. I've been on for quite a while, at least 10 years, that has questions. And sometimes when I did a mailbag, I think one time I did a mailbag on this podcast, people did answer. I would ask people who follow me on Quora to send me questions that they want answers to. Now, normally, what we would do is you answer those questions on the platform. But what I did in that episode a couple years ago is I ended up making those questions turn into a podcast itself. So I did the same thing here, sort of, and just kind of took some of those questions and turned them into an episode today. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to take fake mailbag questions and turn them into real answers and create content out of it and see what happens. So let's get started. I think I had about 12 or 13 questions to get through. First question here I'm going to answer is, if Chris Paul wins the NBA title, how do you view his legacy? Well, as we know, Chris Paul and the Phoenix Suns, have clinched a berth in the NBA Finals this year by disposing the LA Clippers in 6 games. So, Chris Paul is one of those guys that ringless players that gets looked at in negative light because he hasn't done the thing, hasn't won a championship and all that, which is kind of unfair. But if you look at Chris Paul's legacy right now, forget the championship. Chris Paul without a ring is still arguably a top 5 point guard of all time. And I think what you've seen him do with teams, especially in the last couple of years, as he's gotten older, you actually, if you're an NBA fan that's smart, an NBA fan that sees through all the narrative-filled bullshit, you would know that, okay, he hasn't won a title. We get that. But he's still a valuable piece to any team he goes to. You saw the New Orleans Pelicans, or New Orleans Hornets at the time, when he was there. They were a regular playoff team every season, him and Dave West. Okay? He goes to the Clippers. The Clippers were a joke for the entire existence. He's there in LA, and yeah, did they win the title? No. But again, they also played in an era where Golden State existed with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, and then of course the Spurs were dominant at that time too. But the Clippers were a relevant team. They were a relevant championship contender. Okay? He goes to Houston with James Harden. They're literally him getting hurt in Game 5 from one game from going to the finals in 2000. I think is it 18? I think it's 18. Okay? Goes to OKC last year. A team, again, he was a contract on that team just to fill the floor. Just to, whatever. And OKC, all of a sudden, it's a playoff team. And I believe they were a 5 seed last year, if I'm not mistaken, in the playoffs. Obviously, they won the playoffs, that's not the point. Then this year, a Phoenix Suns team that already was starting to show signs of a team that could be really good. Remember in the bubble, they were 8-0. They make the playoffs, but they were starting to show signs. Chris Paul goes to Phoenix, and they're in the finals. Granted, let's be real here, and I tweeted this today on Twitter and on social media, of course, all platforms. And I said, Phoenix Suns got a bunch of breaks. That's a truth. Let's be real here. The Phoenix Suns got a lot of breaks here to get to this point. Okay, if Anthony Davis is healthy for the Lakers, I think the Lakers win this series. But that wasn't the case. They blew through Denver, who was banged up without Jamal Murray. Sweep them. Kawhi Leonard goes down in the Utah series. They survive, go to the conference finals. The Clippers are down Kawhi Leonard. They win in 6 games. Not knocking the Suns. It is what it is. I'm not faulting the Suns because they can't control narratives. It is what it is. If they can't control who gets hurt and how their trek is path. It just happens that way. Some people took the offense to what I said. I'm like, no. What I said is that it's okay if it happens that way. Things happen. You don't get. There's a lot of teams who won championships that, as we've gotten further away from that era, further away from that team winning that championship, that we don't actually take into context. We take into context in right now because it's in the know. It's in the now. You know what I'm saying? I mean, remember that Warriors team, I think back in 2015, every important point guard they played through that series was hurt. The starting point guards were hurt. It happens. But it's okay. And context won't matter. If they win a title, for example, no one's going to care. No one's going to remember in 10 years that, Kawhi Leonard didn't play that series. No one remember that. Come on now. But this would elevate him, actually. It would elevate him. Because, say what you want about Chris Paul, whether you like him or not, he's still, in my opinion, probably a top 5 point guard. I would probably take him, probably the only point guards I would definitely take over Chris Paul, even right now, Isaiah Thomas, Magic Johnson, Steph Curry. John Stockton, maybe. Jason Kidd, maybe. But I would be honest with you, Chris Paul's value and longevity as we move forward this thing, his value is starting to rise. Like, I can argue Chris Paul's over Gary Payton. I can argue Chris Paul's over maybe as good as Jason Kidd, maybe not, if not above. I can argue that. I really could. So his legacy will definitely be stamped in a big way. I think, at least for the people who look at rings only as the only argument to make a top 5 argument, Chris Paul will have that substantiated at that point, and I think it will highlight everything he's done in the last couple of years with the teams he's gone through in the last 5 or 6 years. So that's what I think. So, all right. Anyway, next question here: what do you make of the latest in the Bill Cosby saga? Okay, so as we're recording today, of course, on Thursday, July 1st, Bill Cosby is now free from prison. His conviction was overturned. Some say it's a technicality, I think. Now, I'm going to be honest with you here. I haven't followed the Bill Cosby stuff in detail. Obviously, I know all the banner stuff, all the things that he was accused of and was convicted of, and some of the timeline stuff to some degree, but the details, I have not spent much time on it. So I don't have a strong opinion either way about whether or not he's actually guilty or innocent. I will say, when you have 59, 60 accusers, it's definitely shows that there's a lot where there's smoke, there's fire. I will say that. But there's also a large contingent of people who believe that he got railroaded, whether or not he did this or not. So I steer clear yesterday of reacting. Sometimes I think it's important that if you can't add anything productive to a conversation, whether good or bad, there's no point of talking about it. And that's something I'm learning. Just because I'm on Twitter, just because I have a voice, doesn't mean I need to use it all the time. Especially on subjects I don't understand or don't have more information with. I have friends of mine who have this, who's part of the Free Cosby movement for years. I'm actually trying to get someone on the podcast probably in the future just to give me more clarity from on this side, because it's kind of clear the mainstream media is obviously against Bill Cosby. It's quite clear the mainstream media believes the narrative that Bill Cosby, spiked girls' drinks and all that, and he's guilty of what he's accused of. And the only reason he's gotten off here is because of technicality. And I get that. I am curious, the other side. Why do they think he's innocent? What is it? What details are the mainstream media missing in this case? I don't know. I haven't dived into it. The only high-profile case, well, it's two, but that one was more so when I was a teenager. That was the OJ case. The only high-profile case I've ever really invested heavily into, mainly because I had skin in the game, was the Michael Jackson cases, so to say, from 93 to 2005, and now this recent stuff with Leaving Neverland. And the reason I've had more clarity on that one is because I have skin in the game. As you know, I've had people on this podcast, two women, Josephine Zoni, Jenny Winings, people who were on, two women, were on the witness list for the 2005 trial. One person was actually befriended the first accused in 93, which you can see now on the Square One documentary on Amazon Prime or on YouTube. My friend Jen, who I've known for 20 years, both women known for 20 years, was in contact with the accuser in 2003 that Michael Jackson went to trial for. Okay. And I was getting information about that stuff even in real time back then. So I have skin in the game of that one. I know more information than many don't. And the reason why I feel strong about Michael Jackson's innocence is because of the information that I have invested into and the things I have looked up. The information is out there for the record. Cosby, I haven't had a chance to do that. Well, since I have a chance to, I never really pushed to do that. Maybe I will do that at some point. But I am curious about the other side. Why is the Free Cosby folks passionate about his innocence, despite the number of accusers against him? That's always a kind of, went through my mind for years. So, but like I said, I even recorded on Filter podcast, solo pod, like 7-minute podcast yesterday, initially reacted to the Cosby thing. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to cut it because I don't know. I don't want to invest. I don't want to say the wrong thing. You saw Felicia Rashad, Bill Cosby's co-host on the Cosby Show, tweet out what she did about, the injustice that the injustice that, he went through, and she got destroyed on social media for what she said, not just by random Twitter folks, but even celebrities too. Which, by the way, she has the right to say what she wants to say. It's her Twitter. It's free speech, for the record. But again, that's what happens when you speak. This is why I haven't said anything either way about this case, because I don't know the details, and I need to learn more about what both sides are saying. Like I said, smoke is fire, probably. I don't know. But like I said, I've kept my opinion of Cosby to myself, personally. So, all right. Next question here. While people are shitting on his rant on the Dan Patrick Show, did Scottie Pippen actually make a point? Okay, so Scottie Pippen was on the Dan Patrick Show this past Tuesday. He's promoting a new bourbon. He has a new book coming out in the fall, which I spoke about on this podcast last week or the week before that. I can't remember exactly. And he was on Dan Patrick. He's actually done a little bit of a tour, a radio tour. Like he did Dan Levitar last week, and now he did Dan Patrick. Dan Patrick is a fantastic interviewer, and he was on the show. He made some, and Pippen made some controversial comments. Obviously, he didn't like the way he was portrayed in The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary came out last summer. But the big thing here on his interview, which I'll play a clip of, was that he called his ex-coach Phil Jackson a racist, in conjunction of how he was used. If you remember the 94 playoffs against the Knicks, Game 3, Pippen pulls himself out of the game because Phil Jackson ran a play with Tony Kukoc in the game, which, by the way, the Bulls won. Phil Jackson made the right call on that one. And Pippen, of course, was well publicized, did not like the decision, so he was benched. So I'm going to play the clip of the interview. Not just 30 seconds, because I know a lot of the outlets are playing only the middle of the clips. I'm going to play you the full, not the full interview, but I'm going to play you the full 2.5, close to 3 minutes clip of what he was saying about Phil Jackson, and just for context, and we'll dive more into that right now. Here's the clip of Pippen on the Dan Patrick Show.
The GQ article where you talked about the 1994 playoff game when you refused to go back in the game and Phil set up the play for Tony Kukoc.
Well, I mean, it's not much to be said if you go back and look at when Scottie Pippen entered the Bulls and when Tony Kukoc entered the Bulls and who deserved the last shot of the game.
No. I understand that, Scotty. I'm just going by what you said. You said you need to read between the fine lines, and then you go on to say it was a racial move to give him, Tony Kukoc, a rise. So,
well, I mean, if you knew that Scottie Pippen had been with the Bulls from '87, battled through the Pistons and every other team that we had to get to those 3 championships, wouldn't you give Scottie Pippen one opportunity to get a last-second shot without Michael Jordan? Like 1 year without Michael Jordan. Can I get one shot? Like, I'm doing all the dirty work.
but all of that I understand from the basketball standpoint. But when you say a racial move,
well, why would Tony, who was a rookie, get the last-second shot and you put me out of bounds? That's what I mean, racial. Like, that was Scottie Pippen's team.
But
Scottie
Phil
Pippen
then
was
but,
on pace to be an MVP that year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why would you put him in a position not to be successful? Why wouldn't you put him in a position to succeed? Michael Jordan is not there. So who's next in line for you?
But have you talked to Phil about this? Because by saying a racial move, then you're calling Phil a racist.
I don't got a problem with that.
Do you think Phil was or is?
Oh, yeah. I mean, do you remember Phil Jackson left the Lakers, wrote a book on Kobe Bryant, and then came back and coached him? I mean, who would do that? You name someone in professional sports that would do that, you know? I think he tried to expose Kobe in a way that he shouldn't have. You're the head coach, and you're the guy that sits in the locker room and tells the players, this is a circle, and everything stays within the circle because that's what team is about. But you as the head coach, open it up, and now you go out and you try to belittle, at that time, probably one of the greatest players in the game.
Well, it feels like he's disloyal. I don't know if that makes him a racist.
Well, that's your way of putting it out, and I have my way. I was in the locker room with him. I was in practices with him. You're looking for him afar.
Yeah.
I wanted to play the entire clip because he also added the situation when Phil Jackson made an example also when Phil Jackson and Kobe Bryant had their issues when Phil was coaching the Lakers at the time. So that's why I wanted to add that for more context. Mainstream media won't do that. We're going to do that. Add more context to the conversation to at least get a better understanding of my opinion and what Pippen is saying. Now, Scottie Pippen has obviously had been a lot of resentment towards Michael Jordan, that era, that team. He's gone through a lot, a very, very public divorce with his, I think now ex-wife Larsa. So he's out now, guns blazing. Here's the thing. He's promoting a book. Okay, so you have to embellish a little bit. I'm not saying Pippen is wrong or right here. I'm just saying that he might be right in some cases. Not saying that I agree that Phil Jackson's racist, although we'll get to that in a second. But if you're selling a book, you have to get in kind of like in promotion mode. You know, you got to embellish a little bit, give a little more sauce to the stories, if you will. And that's what I got here. Okay, now Scottie Pippen's always been kind of a guy that just kind of says things somewhat out of pocket. He's kind of inconsistent at times. You know, he's thrown digs at Jordan in the past, so that's nothing new. If you were to believe Phil Jackson, and this is where Pippen, in my opinion, got it wrong. If you believe Phil Jackson's actually racist, which, by the way, there are comments he's made in the past that make you think otherwise. Okay, he used the wrong quotes. He used the wrong situation. The Tony Kukoc situation was not a racial move. He may have looked at us that way, but lest we forget in that game, Pippen actually had a chance to win that game or put the game away. I can't remember that situation, but Pippen had a chance to really help the Bulls win that game with 5 seconds to go and missed a shot on the backboard. Okay? And then Phil decided to make the move to have Tony Kukoc take the last shot, which was, by the way, the right choice because Kukoc hit that shot at the buzzard, and the Bulls won Game 3 of that Eastern Conference semifinals Game 3 series. But if Pippen wants to label, and let's play that game with Pippen. Phil Jackson's a racist. Pippen's doing the damn thing wrong, though. He's using the wrong quotes. Remember LeBron James and the whole posse comment that Phil made when Phil was the president of the Knicks at the time, about back in 2014-15? The posse comment, LeBron, his posse, which pissed off LeBron James. There's also two quotes, I think Scottie could have used as a better example to sound more legitimate. For example, a quote that Phil Jackson made to ESPN.com in October 1999, a year after that Bulls team broke up, after the sixth title. Quote, "I don't mean to say that as a snide remark toward a certain population in our society, but they have a limitation of their attention span. A lot of it probably due to too much rap music going in their ears and coming out their being." Now, that's a quote if Pippen had used, I would say, either racist or out of touch or a blind spot. I don't know. Another quote Phil said in October of 2005 with the San Bernardino Sun. He said, quote, "The players have been dressing in prison garb the last 5 or 6 years. All the stuff that goes on, it's like gangster thuggery stuff. It's time. It's been time to do that." This is also in regards to the dress code that at the commissioner at the time, not Adam Silver, David Stern, thank you, had instituted, and it's Phil Jackson commenting on that. Look, I don't know if Phil Jackson's racist. He's said some weird things in the past, but Phil Jackson also is a weird dude in general. This guy is into Zen, and he lives in Montana. He's kind of disconnected to some degree. So I don't want to make that sound like that's a racist thing. But Scottie Pippen in general, it just seems like a resentful guy. He's just a resentful guy, and he's been resentful towards his years in the Bulls. He was underpaid, I get that. But Scottie Pippen was number 2. He was not. He's arguably the greatest number 2 in the history of basketball. Could be arguably the greatest number 2 in the history of sports. When you consider, what him and Jordan accomplished, and he should be proud of that. But it's got a book to sell, it's got bourbon to sell. I get it. So, anyway, next question here: what relatively unknown band or musician do you actually love? Well, it's a lot of bands I'm into for 3 years. Not much anymore because I've gotten older. I have more things on my plate. But you guys know I used to play in a metal band back in the day. And I also used to listen to a lot of music from a lot of bands that don't get a lot of mainstream love. There's a band named Fear Factory. Obviously, they've been in the game now 30 plus years. That obviously they're not, they just put out a new album last week, but the singer is gone and that band is in disarray. A lot of legal issues, but they had their time in the sun of being a popular metal band, never really mainstream. That's a band. I'd be able to say Seven Dust, but Seven Dust has got some mainstream success in the past. There's a lot of local bands and bands that would roll through Florida 30 years. Most of the bands I think that are unknown mainstream wise are in that genre, metal genre. 36 Crazy Fists in the band. They're pretty big in the metal genre, but again, that's a sequestered genre. They're not mainstream. Soilwork, same thing. Bands like that. Bands that attitude. So those are a couple of bands that come to my mind to answer that question. All right, next question here. What team would be the best fit for Ben Simmons? All right, so obviously you've seen the Philadelphia 76ers, lose in 7 games to the Hawks. Ben Simmons had a horrible series against the Hawks. Especially that game 7. Can't shoot free throws, can't jump shots. There's a lot of rumors about Ben Simmons and his future in Philadelphia. He's going to be there next year. Are they going to trade him? I mean, obviously the rumor mill has been through the roof since that Game 7 that Ben Simmons and the Sixers are inevitable. They're going to part ways at some point. Ben Simmons signed a contract, I think, a year or two ago, so there's a couple of years on that contract. But the only team I could see that he would be a perfect fit for, based on the personnel, is the Golden State Warriors, because he fits a need. He fits a need that the Warriors need. What Ben Simmons is good at, he's fantastic at it. He's a terrific defender. He goes to the basket with will. But, and again, what he does great, he's fantastic at. It's why he's an all-star. But the things he's not good at, he's horrific. And I guess now adding to his issues now is the mental state. The mentality. Can he get through this block? He's admitted it too. But I think the Warriors would be a good fit for him. You put Steph Curry in the wing with Clay, make Simmons your point forward or point guard, whatever. You have those shooters on the outside. If Ben Simmons has shooters around him, he's very impactful. I've always said the Simmons-Embiid marriage was always going to be a short-lived thing. They from what we hear, and they're not really good friends. They travel separate. They travel separately on road games, whatever. They don't get along. It's just it's a fire and ice thing. So oil and water, whatever cliche you want to put in that. So not surprised. I always said that I always said that marriage was short lived. So, all right. Next question here. Do you consider Karl Malone to be overrated? No. In fact, I think as we move away from him playing basketball, he becomes grossly underrated. We forget he's actually the second greatest scorer in history in the league. We forget that. Forget his personal problems and all the personal shit that's been out there for quite a while now. I mean, we know about that. We don't need to talk about it in this podcast because we know about it already. I'm not a Karl Malone guy anyway, but as a player, he is fantastic. He's arguably the greatest power forward of all time. I wouldn't put him there. I would still give it to Tim Duncan. I think he's if you said to me Karl Malone is the second best power forward of all time, that's not a bad answer. I think the only people you could really put in that conversation really is Kevin Garnett. But yeah, Karl Malone is actually underrated now. As we move away from that time, and I think a lot of the reason why people look at him as overrated is probably tying in the personal shit, which you really shouldn't do. You should separate it too. He's actually underrated as we move away from his playing days. So, here's a wrestling question. What is Roddy Piper's pro wrestling legacy to you? Okay, so this is going to shock a lot of folks, but I'm going to say it anyway. I was never a really big Roddy Piper fan. Understanding that his early heel run from 84, 85 through 87, I loved his first run before he quote-unquote retired to go do movies for a year or two in 1987 after WrestleMania 3. But I was never really a huge Piper guy. He's a devoted Hall of Famer. He's a legend. He's all that. One of the greatest talkers in the history of the business. Acknowledging that. I just never, even as a kid, gravitated to Piper. I do respect him, and I do actually, as I'm older now, obviously, I do enjoy especially his early work. But I was never a huge fan of Piper, though. The same thing with Dusty Rhodes. Obviously, Dusty Rhodes is fantastic, Hall of Famer. Hard Times promos, one of the top 5 promos in history of pro wrestling. But I was never a huge fan. Partially because I didn't watch any wrestling back then. And when he came in WWE in 1989, it was kind of a joke. Him and the polka dots and Sapphire and all that. And it was kind of okay, but didn't really get over for me in a big way. So, his legacy is this. He's one of the greatest talkers of all time. He's, gift the gab. Although I will say, I couldn't stand him in the booth with Vince. When Jesse Ventura left in 1990, Piper replaced him for a year or two, and I really enjoy that. Listen to that SummerSlam 1990 commentary to him and Vince. It's to me, it's a hard listen for me because Piper's too much. It's sometimes you need to step back. And that's what Jesse was good at. Jesse was good at making his points, having the wit, but knowing how to leave space, leaving room to breathe in the commentary booth. Piper doesn't do that. And that's I think one reason why I had a hard time really enjoying his work as much. So, but he's a legend, WWE Hall of Famer, and deservedly so, and one of the greats. Both can be right. All right, next question here in the fake mailbag. Real answer is Vaughn number 1. Who's the better Packers quarterback of all time? Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers? To me, this is the easy answer. Who's more beloved? Brett Favre. But that's not the question here. Who's the better quarterback? It's not even close. Aaron Rodgers is way better than Brett Favre. It's not, to me, it's not even just the fact he's better. It's not even in the ballpark. Like, I don't even consider Brett Favre a top 10 quarterback all the time. You want to talk about overrated, for example? I find Brett Favre one of the most overrated players or quarterbacks in history of the sport. Not saying he's not good. He got a ring, yeah. And it was a time, played from 1994, 95 to 97, 98. He was the best quarterback in football. But beyond that, he was very sloppy. He was very inconsistent. He was a gunslinger, obviously. But Aaron Rodgers is way more skilled, efficient. Is he a great leader? I mean, not really. I mean, obviously he's a little bit of a diva, a little bit, with a hard ass. But as a pure talent, Aaron Rodgers is not even close. Not even close. Aaron Rodgers, to me, is the most talented quarterback in the history of football. Now, Pat Mahomes might have answered that in the coming years, but it's still Aaron Rodgers for me. Even at age 37. Not even close. It's Aaron Rodgers, man. Next question here. What do you make of the Damian Lillard situation? All right, so the Portland Trailblazers, another player who's going to have a lot of a big offseason to think about. He's on a contract, obviously, but, there's been some rumblings about Lillard maybe wanting out of Portland. Not just saying it's not the case. Who knows? He's a loyal guy. I think he's the one guy that if he asked to be traded, I don't think people will be that mad, honestly. I don't think people in Portland will be that mad, honestly. I think people respect the fact that he wants to win now, that he has given it his all. The Blazers have made the playoffs 7 straight years, or more than that, probably. I think it was maybe 9 straight years. And they haven't really done, the most farther that's gone is like to the conference finals a couple years ago. But they've hit their ceiling. CJ McCollum's a good player, but he's not enough to put him over the hump. They're a playoff team, but they're not a championship team. Championship team. Yeah. Can't talk today. Championship team. So I believe he's the one guy that if he asked to leave Portland, I don't think the fans will be as mad. Maybe I'm wrong. But I feel like he has enough clout, enough, credit and whatnot, and goodwill in Portland that I feel like they may understand why he would want to leave. Because he leaves it on the floor not every night. He doesn't quit on his team. He's a likable guy. But they've hit their ceiling, So I feel like if he were to actually request a trade out of Portland, I feel like there'll be a lot of people who will support that, including the team itself and their fans. Ooh, a political question. Had done one of these in a while. How would you react if Donald Trump became president in 2024? Who cares? This is a democracy. We all vote. If the people want him to be president, so be it. I'm not a Trump guy, but I'm a guy that allows democracy, that believes in the democracy, who believes in the will of the people. If the will of the people want Donald Trump as their guy in 2024, as much as I may not like it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm so sick of the political jargon and the partisan bullshit and all that. This is why I tell folks: if you want to give a shit about the stuff in this country and have your voice be heard and your legislation, your policies that you support, you need to go out and vote. If you're not voting, you need to shut up. I hate to break it to you. And that's anybody. Pro-Trump, anti-Trump, doesn't matter. You know, if he's president in 2024, then so be it. It'll be because the people want that. I believe in free and fair elections. We've had that. Despite what people think about the 2020 election, that was free and fair, in my opinion. You know? And if Donald Trump were to somehow, which by the way I don't think will happen, I think Donald Trump will, as I said late last year, he'll dangle the idea of running for president, but I think he won't do it. I don't think he'll pull the trigger this time around. But if he ran and won, okay, cool, whatever. I mean, I'm not gonna like it, but you know, that's the will of the people. What are you gonna do about that? So, anyway, next question. About 3 more questions here. 3 more questions here. What made you quit watching wrestling as a whole, or WWE, or wrestling as a whole for 17 years in 2002? Okay, so some of you guys may know my story. Some of you guys that know that back in 2002, I was 22 years old. After WrestleMania 18 X8, Hogan Rock, Icon versus Icon, I just stopped watching the product altogether in real time. Now, there are moments where I check in real quick for a week or two and see what's going on. Like, I knew who John Cena was, Randy Orton, some of the big names. But I never really got into the product, again, current form, day to day, until 2019, the summer 2019. I had the network when it first came out in 2014, but the reason I got the network was because of the old stuff, because of the library. Because I love the old stuff, but I was not into the newer stuff. I was not following The Shield and Roman Reigns' early run and New Day's early run, and when Seth Rollins started, you know, Bray Wyatt. I was not into it at the time until 2019. So, but maybe quit. That's actually the real question here. What made me quit? What made me quit, honestly, was just life. I got into a band in 2002. Got into really making music back then. Didn't watch much TV anyway, to be honest with you. All I watched was sports. And even sports a little while in that time, like a year or two, kind of sort of got, I was kind of in and out of sports. I was doing shows all the time. I was between being in the studio with the bands and, you know, doing shows and whatnot and working and dating girls and all that. I was being a young adult. I was 22, 23 years old. And then, you know, the more you not watch it, you just don't watch it. And then like I said, it took 17 years to come back fully. But I'm glad I'm back now. I'm enjoying it. And I think what's cool about me watching wrestling today, especially, is that I watch it with a different eye now. I watched it from obviously dirt sheets have existed back then too, but I never really followed dirt sheets back then. Now I do. I look at it more like a TV show now in a way that is presented as a TV show. I look at it more broadly. Back then, I didn't care for dirt sheets. If whatever happened, happened. I suspend reality. I still suspend reality to some extent here too, but understanding that this is scripted. You know, the bumps are real, but the you know, the storylines are scripted and whatnot, and you just take what it is. And I think I enjoy it even more now because of it. And I actually appreciate the art, and I especially too. What I love more than anything else when I came back, I love the stories behind everything. Not so much the stories, that storylines on television, but more so the stories behind the scenes. You know, listening to Conrad Thompson's podcast with Something to Wrestle, Bruce Pritchard and Gwilyn JR and those podcasts. Those things really brought me back, honestly. Made me appreciate the art. Not just then, but even now. And the product today, while people make a complaint about how much they don't enjoy Raw or how much the product today is just shitty, the in-ring talents are fantastic. Where you could be critical of the current product is more so the characters. But again, this different era too. So, 2 more questions here. How will the rest of 2021 fare for the New York Mets? Well, right now they're in first place. I don't think they're a World Series contender. I think they're a playoff contender. The NL East right now is still pretty up for grabs. As I pull up right now the standings as it's recording, the Mets right now are 2 games up on Washington. Okay. I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in the Mets in general because that's, being a Met fan as long as I have. By the way, today is Happy Bobby Bonilla Day. You guys know $1.1 million in his bank account. I'm just enjoying the ride. I'm hoping that they make the playoffs, obviously. Hoping they can do some big things. But again, Jacob deGrom's having a fantastic year, but he can't stay healthy. And every game or two, every 2 games, he's getting hurt. Minor injuries. And I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop before he has a major injury. Obviously, the bats need to improve because I'm sick of DeGrom winning games 2-0, 1-0. I'd like to see a DeGrom win 4-5-0 or 5-1. How about that? How about some bat help? And how about less injuries too for the team? All right, final question before we wrap this up. And I enjoy this fake mailbag, real answers. I'll probably do this every month, maybe a couple months. We'll see. Final question here. Your pros and cons of AEW All Elite Wrestling 2 years in. Okay, so I'm a big fan of AEW. You guys know that. Let's go to the pros. Obviously, love the talent. They're really talented guys. I love that it's edgy. I love that they don't take themselves too seriously, at least in moments. I love that they're really getting young talent over. Jungle Boy and the guys of that ilk. I love the energy. I love that there is another product to embrace. Again, I'm not anti-WWE or pro WWE. I'm pro wrestling. I love all the products. I love AEW and WWE. You can enjoy both products. I'm not into this whole war. The cons, obviously, like I said, the war. AEW fans are annoying. Hate to break it to you. Sorry, guys. This is a podcast. AEW fan. Die hard. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you can be annoying. If you don't love WWE, then stop talking about them. Here's your product. You asked for a product that's not WWE. Here it is. Enjoy it. Stop talking shit. I wish AEW more than anything else will stop talking about WWE and compare themselves to WWE and whatnot. Just worry about your product. Okay? Worry about making yourselves better, your product better, your production better, your guys better. You're not, even if you ever did overtake WWE, ain't gonna be for years. WWE is an institution to this medium. They're ESPN, you know what I'm saying? So they are, when anyone, casual, non-fan, when they hear pro wrestling, what's the first thing comes to mind? WWE. They have the library, they have the legacy, they have the lineage. So stop trying to compete with that. Do what you can now to make your current product better so that in 10, 15 years, God willing, you guys are around by then, you now have your own lineage and legacy to look at, to people to admire. That's what should be AEW's focus. That's my one major problem with AEW. Is they worry too much about what Vince is doing and not about what they're doing. That's all. So, anyway, I really enjoyed this episode of this podcast. Fake Mailbag, real answers. We'll do another one of these probably in a month or so. We'll see. Anyway, but I am on Twitter at EGChristian7, Earnestly Media at all, social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. Till the next episode, we will talk soon. And yeah, later, guys.
Thank you.